Hey guys, welcome to the Smart Venture Podcast. In each episode, we're going to have conversations with some of the top investors, superstar founders, as well as well-known tech company executives in Silicon Valley. We'll have a coffee chat with them to learn their way of thinking and actionable tips on how they build or invest in a successful company. Before we start our show today, I want to make sure the listener, aka you, understand that everything a person say on the podcast only reflects to hers or his own opinion, not the show or the company they work at. Our guest today is a co-founder of Naked Puppy, a clean beauty e-tailer that uses AI to pinpoint the perfect for you clean makeup and skincare products. Prior to founding Naked Puppy, she served as a VP of Marketing or CMO at Amazon, OpenTable, Upwork, and Eventbrite. Her name is Jaleh Bisharat. Jaleh, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Grace. I'm excited to be here.
To start off our show, can you tell us about how did you grow up and how did you get into tech?
Sure. I will tell you a story about what impacted me the most growing up. I would imagine that's what you're most interested in.
Yeah, totally.
You know, I'm Iranian. I wasn't born there. I was born in England, but I spent my formative years there. And so really my immigrant story has had a huge impact on me. I boarded a plane by myself at 17 and flew from Tehran, Iran, to Boston to go by myself to go to college. My parents raised me, though, with this one idea that ended up being so important and so prescient, which is that they can take everything away from you, everything. You know, they can take your money, your home, your material goods, everything except what's in your mind. So I actually grew up as a girl at a time and place where not all girls went to college, but my determination to get an education and to really treasure what was in my mind was instilled at a very young age. You know, back then, though, when I went to college, I mean, I'm talking about the late 70s, it was really tough because there was no social media, there was no email, you know, you wrote a letter, it took 2 weeks to get back. You know, I was really untethered. But nothing compared to what happened in 1979. I was 19 years old. You know, the Iranian Revolution occurred. So you and some of your listeners won't remember this, but let me tell you, they took 52 American hostages in Iran. You know, it was actually a terrifying time to be Iranian. I mean, people were getting attacked. Our assets were getting frozen, you know, and my parents fled and lost everything. And so, believe it or not, their outlook had suddenly come to pass, meaning we lost everything. And all I had was what was in my mind. So I suddenly had no money to complete my senior year of college. You know, I pretty much cried my way into getting a scholarship that year. But I will say that whole experience combined with the way I'd been raised and this one thought that really stuck with me, I think laid the foundation for my entire career. Because every time it seems like anything can be taken away, I think, yeah, but my mind is mine and I can always fix it if I apply myself.
Yeah, that's really inspirational. In a situation that everything is going wrong, how do you have the motivation and how do you study back then since there weren't any internet yet?
Yeah, well, by the time the revolution started, I had come to college. So it was my parents who were living through the chaos, less so me, except that it felt very chaotic here because we were so hated as a people, honestly. You know, Grace, it really does come back to what I said, which was thinking that if I was going to make my way in the world, I had to focus and I had to learn. And of course, everybody back then didn't have the internet. So I was in college and I just really put my head down and made sure that I did my work because hard work was going to be the way to be here by myself and succeed.
You seem very determined and driven. Who do you look up to back then? Did you have any siblings?
Well, I had a younger sibling and a brother, and he's amazing. And I do look up to him. But he was younger. Back then, you know, probably I had really, really, really good professors in college. So I looked up to many of them back then. But I will tell you that my mentality was that I had to create a person in myself that could stand on my own 2 feet.
Yeah.
It was, there were definitely amazing people that I learned from, but my mentality was I always have to teach myself and make sure that I'm self-sufficient.
Yeah, I love that you wanted to be self-sufficient. I think that's a really important mentality to have to achieve a successful career or life. So after graduating from Harvard, how did you get into tech?
So I hope this isn't disappointing to hear, but mine was the great unplanned career. Meaning people often ask, like, did you set goals? Did you have a vision? The truth is that I didn't. My mentality was pretty simple, which is to find something I love to do with people who love doing it, and then to do really good work. And the rest of it would take care of itself. But I wasn't even thinking about that last sentence, like the rest of it will take care of it myself, therefore I will have a good career. I just, so we moved to California because my husband was from the Bay Area. I loved my Mac. So I ended up, my first job was at the Apple software subsidiary, Claris. It actually wasn't the highest paying offer I got, but it was with the best people I could find. And I just thought, you know what, I'm on this journey and I'm going to make the most of this journey and I'm going to have an impact. And that's what I did. I put my head down and my career really did take care of itself. I think my managers recognized that how sincerely I wanted the team and the company and the business to succeed and how much I cared about our customers. So my career just moved because I was, in 3 words, my focus was to do good work. I never asked for anything. I know that's uncommon, and I know that it's not even that popular. I will tell you, I can talk to you in a minute about how I treat women, because I know often it's hard for women to ask for things. I happen to be a person that didn't ask for a lot. I just, maybe I had just really, really open-minded managers, but I managed to advance without asking for it. So, and I enjoyed myself every step of the way. I will say, I do want to address that for 1 second if you're interested, which is, I do know that women struggle to advance themselves more than men do, which is why I have several rules. Once I became a leader in different companies, I had several rules to make sure that the women weren't disadvantaged. And one of them was, I never responded to people asking for a raise. I always make it my job to make sure when they deserve it. And I would tell the entire team that. And actually, it was a huge sigh of relief because no one wants to ask. Also, like when people come in to get their offer, I never, I shouldn't say never, but my official position, like it's been extremely rare in my lengthy career, is I will get you the best offer so that your first interaction is not to negotiate with your future manager. And I do. I go get the best offer, but the real reason I do it is A, to avoid that interaction, but B, because it puts men and women at an equal footing, because often it's men who are more aggressive negotiators. So I just sort of nip it in the bud in advance. So while I didn't have to ask, I also, have created a culture where people don't ask or don't have to ask, because I want to make sure that women aren't disadvantaged as a result.
Yeah, I love that you're making sure people get equal opportunity for a race. One of the interesting things you've mentioned is choosing the right people to work with than the highest paying job. Curious, what are some traits for the right people and how do you identify them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the question to ask yourself, that I ask myself, is, do I want to be on an intense journey with these people? It's like, picture yourself going to the moon and you're stuck in that rocket ship, with these people day in, day out, right?
Yeah.
And what makes you want to be on a journey with them? For sure, for me, number one is positive energy. I know it sounds super obvious, but so many people, like, to me, positive energy is that person who finds a way to love their job, smiles through thick and thin. And I don't mean in a lightweight way. I mean in a, okay, we just got some lemons. Let's figure out how to make lemonade, and not have emotional overhang or negative energy while because every business has its hiccups. There's no such thing as a straight shot to the moon. Anyone who says our company just took off is always hiding the part where they wandered in the desert for several years. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so, you want to work with people who have the positive energy, not only to bring a kind of excitement to the job every day, and who don't have a whole lot of emotional overhang so that you're spending a lot of time on negative emotion, but also who bring the positive energy to problem solving. That would be number one. The other is, and really I can give you, I would say the best example I ever saw of this was Jeff Bezos at Amazon. But I've seen other examples too, where the person, now I'm talking about the leader that you work for, thinks big enough, is thinking about how to disrupt, thinking about how to make the impossible possible. At the same time, they're really good at focusing on the one or two things that are really going to move the needle. And I say that because I think one of the most tough kinds of people to work with or for are those who have a new idea every other day. We've all seen it, right? It's like ideas are a dime a dozen. There is never a shortage of ideas, ever. The shortage is in excellence and execution, and in figuring out which ideas or what areas to focus on. And I've noticed, I've seen this throughout my career. Teams that are focused are calm and productive. Teams that feel like they're constantly getting yanked around, actually, or who come in every morning not quite sure what they're going to work on, that day or that week or that month, produce far less for the company. So it's that ability to have a big mission, but focus the team on how to get there. That I think is a really important characteristic, one, that drew me to the right leaders, or to leaders who thought that way. And then finally, in terms of choosing people, so it's like people you want to work with because they're positive and problem-solving oriented, people who think big but can focus. And then the third one would be people who are really customer obsessed. You can have the first two, but if you're not thinking all day, like, who is my customer? What's their DNA? Can I complete their sentences? Shoot, we have this hiccup. Well, why? What is the customer experiencing? How do I take the customer point of view to solve this problem? That to me is the link that ties a great, and I'm saying very generally, of course, I'm answering generally. Specific roles have specific things to admire, but overall, I would say those are the big picture characteristics I look for: customer obsession, the ability to balance big thinking with focus, and then positive energy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the characteristics. Being able to focus, having customer obsession, the can-do attitude, and positive energy are some great traits to look for in a team. You have worked as the VP of Amazon, CMO of Eventbrite, and SVP of Upwork. Maybe beside Amazon, how do you recognize each opportunities when they weren't an obvious choice? How did you navigate the marketing strategies on each team and take them to the next level?
Well, this is a big question. So let me start with, you mentioned about Amazon and choosing Amazon. Actually, I ended up at Amazon through an acquisition. And Grace, this was 20 years ago when Amazon was still, I don't want to say small because it was bigger than a lot of companies I've been at, but much smaller than it is now. I went in through acquisition and ended up getting promoted to the VP of marketing there. I will say that I was at Amazon for a short period of time only because it was in Seattle, and we had to move back to San Francisco due to my husband's, he was a tenured professor, and it wasn't working out for him to commute by flying. So I was at Amazon for less than a full year. I probably learned 5 years worth of lessons there in that 1 year, though, which I can talk about in a minute. But the other big company I was at, or the brand that you would have heard of I was at among these, was OpenTable. Mm-hmm. And OpenTable really drew me in when I first got back to San Francisco for the reasons I just said. Our CEO there was Thomas Layton, who might be the most focused CEO I have ever worked for in my life. Mm-hmm. He was just brutal about what we weren't going to do. Mm-hmm. And so that the effort to result was really high. Mm-hmm. Therefore, morale was really high because people didn't feel like they were ever spinning their wheels. I'm not saying that we were always right about what we chose, but we were very good at choosing what to focus on and then good at taking in new information based on his example and adjusting based on new data. Mm-hmm. And also giving ourselves time limits as to how long to run the experiment. And then if it didn't work, to call a spade a spade. For me, OpenTable, I got there super early. Actually, let me make a generalization. Some of these companies are bigger now, but a lot of them, most of them, I got to them when they were very early or like through acquisition from a startup. I actually love startups because I love taking brands and ideas from inception and building them into brands that have meaning, that matter to consumers. Mm-hmm. So, I got to Upwork when it was Odesk and it was pretty tight. The marketing team was 6 people. Mm-hmm. And then it merged with Elance and became Upwork. And that was a really, really wonderful experience. And of course, it's a very relevant company now with the way the world is unfolding.
So when it comes to picking the company to join, you mentioned you joined Odesk when there were 6 people on the marketing team. What was your first impression of the company? When you started working there, what strategy did you adapt onto the team to scale it and making it a huge success later on?
Yeah. Okay. So to answer the first question, how did I figure out? It's interesting you ask. People have asked me before, friends and family, like, how are you so good at picking companies? Upwork and Eventbrite went public within 3 weeks of each other. And I got that question a lot. Like, how are you so good at picking stocks? I promise you, Grace, I'm terrible with stocks. I'm not great at personal finance. I don't pick stocks. I'm not very good at it. I would never, don't follow my advice. I pick people and, great people have a way of building successful companies, right? Mm-hmm. Well, people and missions, meaning like with Upwork at the time, Odesk, it was clear to me that this was the future of work and that there was no way the world wasn't going to end up in a place where talent could, why would you limit your, okay, so for people who don't know what Upwork does, it's the world's largest freelancer marketplace where businesses can hire freelancers and freelancers can make themselves available to businesses. And why would you limit opportunity, both for workers and for businesses, to 25 miles, close to your neighborhood, close to the office? Mm-hmm. Of course, with collaboration tools, you want to find talent wherever it is and integrate into your business, whether it's in Gaza or in Eastern Europe or 5 minutes from the office. To me, this was such a big idea. I couldn't not join this company. Plus, I love the people.
Mm-hmm. When you first joined Upwork, how big was the team and what was your first impression of it?
So the marketing team was 6 people and it might have been, I'm going to get this wrong, but maybe 100 people when I first got there. And a very motivated, environment. And this, but it was also really fun to get there and get my feet wet and dig in to how we were going to take this idea that was starting to take off, but turn it into the future of work. And the meaning of that was, so maybe one of the things I will say, if this is what interests you, you said, how did you have an impact there? Mm-hmm. It's that, I'll just give you one example. We thought very deeply on my team about what is it that we were actually doing? Because making work matter really matters inside a company. Like if you're trying to, if you want to motivate your team, whoever you are, whether you have 3 people or 3,000 people working for you, rule number 1 is their work has to matter to them. If they're just coming in punching a clock, they do one kind of work. If they feel like they truly are having an impact on the world, their output triples. So we did spend time deeply getting into customer shoes and understanding why our work mattered. And we did reframe it for the team. And I'll say this from a marketing lens, but also for customers, as we're not just connecting freelancers and clients. We are building freedom, creating freedom and opportunity like the world has never known before. Freedom to work from anywhere, an opportunity to get business from anywhere, and freedom to grow your business no matter how small you are and how little or much you can afford by hiring people from around the world who are the best talent. This reframing it as freedom and opportunity, I think, really fueled an emotional connection, both internally and externally with the brand, that was meaningful.
Yeah, I love that you created a mission for the company. What are some actions you took to build up the team and scaling up this company?
Well, I would say, if you're asking about team building, I would say the number 1 rule I have for team building is to always hire people who are better than me at what they do and let them know that I feel that way. Let them know that that's in fact true. Meaning, so, you hire people that truly are better than you. Otherwise, why are you hiring them if you're going to micromanage them? Hire people who are better than you and that complement your skill sets, right? So I tended to, as an example, I did go to business school. I can, I have decent analytical skills, but I love words, I would say, more than numbers. So I tend to hire people who are really, really, really good analytically because it's not where I would say I should lean into my own skill set. So hire people who complement you, who are better than you, and then let them know that. Meaning, people do their best work when they're able to run their own show. Where, if somebody, for example, when my peers would ask me a question, I would say, ask him. He's the expert here. Copy on the reply to the email. That elevates him not only to the rest of the company, but also in his own mind. Boy, I am the expert. I better do this really good work.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, so it's like you want to give a really clear vision, but you want to hire people who are better than you, have them know that they're better than you, use frequent use of the most empowering 2 words in the English language, which is you decide. Because when they're deciding, they own their own decisions. And they, I don't know if you've seen this before, Grace, but I have people who feel like, I was at a company once, I'm not going to name names. They felt like the boss was going to decide anyway. So they never did their best work. They felt like even no matter what I write, he's going to rewrite it or whatever. So they kind of did 80% jobs. Well, when it's like you decide, you own this, they do 110%. The only other thing I would share when you ask about building teams and, getting them to do their best work and then getting the word out. Well, 2 others, actually. One, of course, is the customer obsession I mentioned earlier. Like everybody on the team needs to be able to live and breathe the customer. And I like to say it, can you finish their sentences? Because if you can finish their sentences, then you are marketing correctly and solving a problem they care about. And then the second one, and I need to remind myself of this still today, is that there is no such thing as over communicating with your team. Meaning what's obvious to you as the North Star for this quarter, if you think you need to say it once a quarter, say it once a week. It's amazing how people have a way of needing to hear things many times, more often than you think, because it's in your head for it to become in their heads, especially if your team grows to be larger. Like, We may have started off with a small team, but as the company gets bigger and bigger, when I've had teams of 60, 80 people, each one of them is on their own trajectory, and you need to over communicate what's the larger goal we're all pursuing as often as possible.
Yeah, I love your managing tips on saying you decide and making the team feel like they have ownership on a project and responsibility to make things happen. However, when you're giving someone so much credit on their expertise, how do you manage them when things aren't going into the direction that you wanted?
I mean, nobody starts without a written set of goals and objectives. So I should be clear about that. Even contractors, meaning people who are just going to do a few hours, a week, I write down, here is your overall objective, like the reason we hired you, why it matters, why your work matters. Then your 30, 60, and 90-day objectives. And the characteristics of a great blank, a great director of, growth marketing, or the characteristics of a great marketing communications manager. So they know not only what it is they have to do, but how they're going to be judged. Like, what characteristics are we looking for? What kind of expertise are we looking for? What kind of attitude? So there are guardrails. And I find often people post these on their walls. So that's step one in communication. Step two in communication is frequent communication, meaning not only sticking to weekly one-on-ones where there's enough time to go back and forth, that when they need a sounding board, it's like, to me, the ideal manager sets up the direction, kind of the expected results, the expected attitude and approach, is always there for coaching, but sets you free to do it the way you want. In the unlikely event things are going off the rails or whatever, of course I would step in. Of course, any good manager would step in, but 90% of the time they're closer to it. They're going to do a better job anyway. This brings me to another actually sort of unwritten rule I have, which is whenever someone asks me a question, I drop my work. Unless there's some big deadline, I drop my work because I figure if they have a question, I need to unblock them no matter how busy I am. So that, like, the minute you become a manager, it's your job to make sure your people are leveraged. Otherwise, why did you hire them? So you do drop everything and help them work through it. Being a good manager is not just hiring better than you and then ignoring. I mean, that is irresponsible.
Yeah. So for Upwork, how big was the team when you left? You mentioned that when you were working at Upwork, there were about 6 people on your team. What was the transition like being in a team of 6 to eventually lead a bigger team, becoming the CMO, SVP of these companies? What's the skill set do you need back then and now?
Well, even with 6 people, so by the time I left, I want to say there were 25 or 30 people. We had merged with our largest competitor, Elance, and that was lovely because then we got to collaborate. And yes, as soon as you have, that many people, so much of your job becomes, how are we making sure that everybody is at the right intersection of their passions and their skill set and what we need? And really observing to see how happy they are, how good they feel about themselves and their work, and whether they're performing at the highest level. So I almost joke that when you have a team, that starts to exceed a dozen people, you're doing as much HR and motivation as you are like marketing yourself. You know what I mean? The real contrast actually is between those companies and Naked Poppy, where, which I started a couple of years ago. And that was a really humbling experience because for the longest time, it was me and one part-time person. And so I had to go back and do work that people who reported to people who reported to people used to do for
Who
me.
reported to you, yeah.
Yeah. And let me tell you, technology moves really quickly, and doing it yourself, it was both humbling and exhilarating, actually. But there's a huge difference between being a founder and finding yourself doing things yourself versus equipping and motivating, enabling other people to do the work, and you just orchestrating the big vision and then reacting to their work.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're a CMO of a company, you're not only orchestrating your own team, but you're sitting with your peers on an executive staff to make sure that the whole system works well, and that you're doing the right thing by the company.
Yeah. So what's a day-to-day look like for you at a company like Upwork or Eventbrite? And what does a day-to-day look like for you at Naked Poppy?
Well, to summarize, I mean, at those bigger companies, especially when they got bigger, my own work, I found the way to do it was to show up at 7:30 a.m. and I got all my work done between 7:30 and 9. Anything proactive that I needed to do, because the rest of the day was very, very meeting oriented. And so then the meetings would be initiatives that were cross-functional, going, reacting, responding. Perhaps a team member would be presenting, or meeting with my own team and setting strategy and making sure that they were equipped to do their jobs. Very different than now. Now, and especially at the beginning with Naked Poppy, but now still, it's like I had to remaster. I'm not going to lie to you. When you are at a super senior level, a lot of the work you do is context switching. And yes, you have to be on, but it's much more shallow work in the sense of you're not sitting down for 3 hours on a consistent basis and trying to move a mountain. You're trying to help other people move their mountains. So I really had to, I actually read a couple of books on deep work, and to learn the psychology, to put myself back into a world where I could be as productive as I was at the beginning of my career when I was doing things myself. It's a really, really different, way of moving through your day, where you're just going from business project to business project. And if you don't do it, there's no one else there to do it. So like, how are we, for example, we just launched a facial oil. Who was going to launch it? I did it. I didn't have, see what I'm saying? So I sort of thought through all the steps to this launch and, worked with a designer to create, this. I mean, I won't take you through the details because you probably don't care, but it's very much what I did at the beginning of my career, except with the benefit of my career.
Yeah, tell us more about Naked Poppy. What made you decided to start the company and leave an executive position at another startup? You raised funding from some top VC firms in the space. How do you cultivate the relationship ahead of the time?
Consistent with not having a planned career, the great unplanned career, I had actually left Eventbrite. I was working with another company that I really liked. It was a startup. And something happened that was super interesting, at least to me. I had always been that person that was interested in clean beauty. I was always that person that cooked organics, food from my garden, etc. I joke that when Whole Foods started carrying clean beauty products, I was their first customer. Who wants to buy beauty products at the grocery store? That was me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stuff didn't work that well. Crunchy granola, not the experience you want to have, but it was just my mentality of everything in my life. I tried to be sure was clean and organic as possible for health reasons. And I noticed that formulations were getting better and better. And it hit me that so many women were unaware that what they put on their face, like that clean beauty is to traditional beauty, what processed food is to organic food. Sorry, the other way around. Clean beauty is to traditional beauty, what organic food is to processed food. It's just better for you. And it's not that hard to explain. I just explained it to you. But how few women were aware, one, and two, that it no longer had to be a compromise. I actually did I actually went to a farmer's market with a friend a couple weekends in a row and did these blind tests where I took a clean mascara and a traditional mascara, had women try them on, in blind fashion and vote for which they liked better. And the clean mascara got half the votes. And of course, the minute I told them, I unmasked them and said, well, this one's clean and this one isn't, more than 80% said, well, of course I'll buy the one that's got better ingredients. somehow I just couldn't let go of the idea that this was a really important trend. And one that mattered to me, back to work mattering. Like, I care, it's not that using traditional beauty products are going to kill you any more than eating processed food is going to kill you, except the accumulation of chemicals in your life. Actually, if you believe it matters, and I do, what an opportunity to have an impact on health, on public health. So I never thought I would start a company. I never had that idea that I needed to be a CEO someday. People would often ask me, I was perfectly happy to focus on what I did in the past, but 24/7, I could not let go of this idea. So I decided to drop everything and explore it for a couple of months and just see what I came up with. And it became 24. It wasn't a job, and I wasn't earning any money. Like, I hadn't raised any money. It just became what I had to do. I still don't think of it as a job. Monday morning is my favorite morning because I love it so much, and I work all weekend anyway. But I don't know why I said the word work, because I enjoy it.
Yeah, I love your passion about the company and the mission. So I went to the website. It's really personalized. After I fill out a form, I got custom product recommended to me. What were the initial steps that you took to turn a passion into a product or a company?
That's a really good question. Well, so when we first started Naked Poppy, the focus was on clean beauty, getting clean makeup out to women and men who, too. But what quickly became clear was several things. Like, the biggest insights, we interviewed hundreds, actually thousands if you include the quantitative surveys that we did. I love research, and I love this whole thing about being able to finish I can finish your sentences, by the way. It quickly became clear that the three biggest problems are, number one, nobody can figure out what's clean. Like, it is a trend now, and so everything markets itself as clean. But actually, there's a huge difference between, we have no parabens and phthalates with truly vetted for clean. So that was number one. Number two, women are wired to mix and match brands, actually. Nobody, an average of 7 brands in anyone's makeup bag. Very few women just buy it all from the same brand. So we quickly realized that it was important to meet that need with multiple brands. That is why Naked Poppy, we have 2 products of our own, but we have almost 500 products total. Most of them come from lovely, clean beauty brands that we just love and use ourselves. The third big one, and this is the biggest one actually, is that shopping for makeup can be overwhelming in general, especially if you're busy. Going clean is even more overwhelming. If you've been using the same stuff for the past few years and all of a sudden you make a decision to go clean, where do you begin? Not only what's clean, but what's going to look good on me. Like, how do I know it's going to look good on me? It takes an hour just to pick a lipstick shade, So in order to solve that problem, it affected our business model, which was, we're not going to create 500 products from Naked Poppy. Couldn't do that fast enough to solve the problem. So that's when we decided, anyway, if there are good products that already exist, we don't need to. We'll just formulate where we see white space. So that is how we decided to work with these wonderful, clean brands. And that was why we decided to build this AI-based recommendation engine. It's actually, the algorithm is patent pending. We take in information about you. And this engine was built by a combination of makeup artists, data scientists, and green chemists. So it's very much, makeup artist driven, data science developed. And then the green chemist to make sure everything is clean.
For sure.
Get smarter over time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. You have a team of data scientists building a recommendation system to help customer pick specific clean products that look good on them. When it comes to shopping, I'm sure some people would love that personalized experience. But I think a lot of people are just buying the products that are endorsed by famous YouTuber or Instagram models. How do you market your company to the mass market?
That is an excellent question. Not devil's advocate at all. Our target audience, because you can't be all things to all people, actually isn't the woman who is always aspiring to wear what Kylie Jenner wears. That woman is always going to shop from Kylie Jenner, and she should. You know, if that's exciting to her. We actually target women who want to look great, and who want to feel great, and who want to, nail it at that board meeting or that PTA meeting. It doesn't matter, but who have a purpose that takes them away from thinking about watching a whole bunch of YouTube videos of makeup artists and stuff. It's a very significant chunk of women. And the older she gets, the more she feels that way, by the way. So women 30 plus, especially once they have kids and get deep into their career, start spending less and less time following celebrities and shopping with their friends in the mall, and enjoying 2 hours at Sephora and feeling like, I just want to go to my kid's soccer game or prepare my presentation. Just tell me what's going to look good on me, because makeup and beauty are a means to an end. But my purpose is different now. That's the woman we target. She tends to feel like she's self-confident. She's enough. She just wants to enhance herself. We actually don't target. And I know that, these people are out there, women who think about like the latest trend and who want to emulate the latest trend because it's a trend all the time. It's a little bit less of our target audience.
Yeah, it's a great idea to target a specific group, having a particular customer profile. What are some strategies do you use to attract the right audience at the beginning? How did they find out about your company at the beginning?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we actually don't do paid marketing. I'll tell you that right now. I'm not saying that the day won't come. But this is a good lesson, I think, for any entrepreneur. Oh, and I forgot to answer your question about investing, which I'll do in a sec. You want to start, I would rather have 2,000 really happy customers than 200,000 churn and burn customers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the early days. So we have been very careful in the early days to make sure that we are growing only organically. Because if you're growing organically, that means you have solved a problem. And that's what we're doing right now. So people hear of us generally through friends, word of mouth or PR. And I consider any earned media, Naked Poppy has been covered in lots of mainstream publications like InStyle and Allure and, Mind Body Green and the Zoe Report and so on and so forth. I don't think editors would write about us if what we were doing wasn't innovative and exciting to them and if they didn't love our products. Same thing with influencers. For the most part, influencers have found us. Or, there's a personal relationship that we've built and they just like what we do. So that's how people have found us through what I consider organic means. To answer your question about going forward, once we have really worked out Naked Poppy works really well right now. And actually we do have high return rates and high satisfaction rates. So we're very close. But it's been organic so far.
Yeah, the organic growth and the word of mouth marketing is definitely the strongest way to test out the market and generate the right customer. At the beginning, how did the PR firm from big name publications and the first group of customers discover your product? Was it just the website that generates the traffic?
We reached out to them and said, we have something we'd like to share. Here's what it is. And we broke through, I think, because what we had to share was truly innovative.
Yeah.
And we often hear it. This is truly innovative. I have not seen anything like this. I have seen quizzes quizzes are very different than in-depth assessments that are smart and that get it right much of the time. And that when we don't, we use signal like returns and ratings and reviews and stuff to get smarter over time. So, they recognize that. And also the products that we create ourselves, the two that we have that we've sent them, they're both real. I'll send you, Grace, if you're interested. They're really good products. People can tell what are good products because we know our space, we know what's missing, and we know how to make clean products because it's what we do 24/7. To answer your question about investors, which you asked earlier, like how did I work with investors? So this is not going to help your younger entrepreneurs. This is actually an argument for, if you're young, if you're the next Mark Zuckerberg, do go for it. Like it is an exciting world to be an entrepreneur in. I actually waited till later in life, again, not by design, but because this was when Naked Poppy happened to me. But also I do think it's wise to learn on someone else's dime and to learn from people you think are great, who you want to become or who you want to learn from before trying to do it on your own, because it's not for the faint of heart. So by the time I came to raise money, I knew people, I had worked with them. I had worked for them. And so I think it made it easier early on. What they're doing is they're investing in the team. You know this, Grace, right?
Yeah.
Like when it's seed stage, you're saying, I'm just going to make a bet that this person will assemble the right team and will figure it out and won't give up.
Yeah.
So, that is an advantage of taking the time to learn from others, to put your head down, to always do good work so people think well of you. And I guess the other thing I would say I did, and I don't, in hindsight, I don't know if this was the reason why, but I didn't create a deck for the first round. My co-founder and I created like this 6-page memo. It's an Amazon style memo where it forces you to write out the business plan. And the minute you put something in writing in words, it actually forces you to be more crisp. And once I'd written that out, I shared it with people. And we used that to raise money.
Yeah, I like that. Writing down concrete business plans, having good industry reputation is super important. So we're at the last section of our episode, which is the SVP special. I have 3 questions for you. Who made the biggest impact in your career? What is a good book for us to read? And who would you invite to your dinner party?
I would invite Jeff to my dinner party. He came to my house once for dinner and it was really fun. And I'd love to catch up with him after 20 years. My favorite book. I love so many books. I can't even begin, but I'm going to tell you my 2 current favorites. One is called Homegoing, and it's the history of enslavement through the generations, starting in the 1700s. I want to say the 1600s actually. It's called Homegoing, and then the other one is The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. I could not put it down, and I did not see the world the same after reading it. It's actually about racism and the prison pipeline in this country. Those are not business books. There's lots of good business books, but those are top of mind right now. So I'm sharing those with you. Who had the biggest impact on me?
Yeah, as a person.
My parents, who told me that what they can never take away from you is in your mind.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on to the show, Jaleh. I think Naked Poppy is doing something really interesting in the makeup and healthcare space. Would love to have you on the show again sometime in the future for part 2 on how you built this amazing brand.
That would be wonderful. I love talking to you, Grace. Thank you so much.
All right, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Smart Venture Podcast. If you like it, please hit subscribe so you don't miss any tips from the experts. If you want to see more behind the scene, please go to smartventurepod.com. If you want to connect with me, all my socials are at Grace Gong GG. Besides LinkedIn, it's just Grace Gong. See you next time.